What's up, guys? It's Amanda and welcome back to my channel and happy Artsy Fartsy Friday. So today's video, yes, I know I say this every week, but I'm really excited for this artwork. This was something that was sort of last minute. I didn't know what I was going to do for this week's video, and it just sort of popped into my head that I wanted to do a portrait of Frida Kahlo, and I thought I could make it in such a way that it would be kind of this good design to put on merch and t-shirts, and it would be a good print. It's not too busy, it's very clean. I had this kind of clear idea that I wanted this to be a very versatile image, and I did some sketches in my sketchbook and kind of planned it out, and I came up with this idea of kind of her looking up. She looks kind of cross-eyed for most of the video, but I do end up kind of fixing that at the very, very end, and you'll see that in the final scan at the very end. But I wanted to have her kind of looking up and her hands kind of, at the bottom. So for the most part, the piece is very, very symmetrical, although she does have like this heart with thorns on the left side of her body, and that's, kind of symbolic. You see that a lot with like Catholic Hispanic saints and that kind of stuff too, and I feel like it's very fitting for Frida Kahlo. She does include this in some of her artwork as well, so I kind of wanted to include that element, and so I feel like that asymmetry and just that one part of the piece looks really, really cool. And right now I'm inking the piece using my acrylic inks, and I'm using a few different things. So I started off inking the piece with my sepia ink. These are by De La Roni, by the way. They're amazing, and I'm using them with a synthetic water brush pen from Michaels. This is not a Pentel pen, but I picked this up in my Inktober supplies video, so if you want to know more about this pen, go check out that video, because I can't remember the brand right now. But then I used my red De La Roni ink to ink some of the other elements in the piece, the heart, the flowers, and then the string around her neck, because I feel like that just adds such a cool pop of color, and I love the contrast. And I've really been digging using these inks lately. They just look so clean and so soft, but at the same time they have a lot of dimension and weight to them, which is just amazing. And I've been using these a lot with watercolors, so you're gonna see me pull those out in a minute. I'm gonna be using my Winsor & Newton Cotman watercolor set, the one with the 12 colors in it. By far my favorite watercolor palette of all time. I have a big watercolor palette filled with some Reeves watercolors, and I just find those to be really chalky. I don't like the way that they dry and the way that they feel on the page. They're just not my favorite, but I've really been digging watercolor lately, and I feel like watercolors kind of pulled me out of this art funk that I was in, and I don't know, just made me want to try new things. Of course, I will not give up my Copic markers for good. I will still be using those from time to time, but I just feel like right now this is where my heart is at, and this is what I want to do. So for those of you that like watercolor, you're gonna like the next couple of videos. Also, what you see that I did right there was shift the underneath image that I was tracing with the light box over slightly, because I didn't like where her hand was positioned. So I just moved the image that I was tracing on my light box over a little bit, and that's a really easy way to like fix a sketch if you're working traditionally, and just a little tip for you. So yeah, if you're working with a light box, you can still kind of correct a few mistakes as you go along, and that's what I did here, because I really wanted that symmetry in her hands. So yeah, now I'm just kind of putting down some basic washes in her skin. I really wanted the center of her face to be lighter than the sides of her face. I wanted to create that dimension, and I go in throughout the piece with a lot of like pinks and purples, just because those tones for me really resonate with Frida. Reds and just kind of warm colors. I know she didn't just use this color palette in her artwork, but for some reason this was the color palette that came to mind when working on this piece. So I gave her like a very heavy blushed cheek, and then shaded a lot with like a violet purple kind of wash, just to give that dimension. And again, I I really like the way this came out. I can't say that enough, and I don't mean to sound like I'm tooting my own horn or anything, but it's just, lately I haven't been proud of a lot of the work that I've done. So when I do feel proud of something, I want to remind myself of that and remind myself that sometimes I create things that I'm really proud of, and sometimes I don't. But the times that I do are really good times, and they feel good. So yeah, the biggest issue for me throughout the piece was the way that her eyes looked. And I went back and forth on this a lot, because when she looked kind of cross-eyed, I thought it was kind of like sweet and endearing, and it looked kind of goofy, and it was almost like she was rolling her eyes or something. But I did find it to kind of be continually distracting to the piece and look almost too goofy and out of place. So what I ended up doing at the very end was just taking like a brown multiliner and kind of widening the pupils on either side so that they didn't look cross-eyed and they just kind of looked more centered. And that seemed to kind of help a lot. I do feel like she still kind of looks, kind of fed up in her expression, like she's rolling her eyes at all of this misogyny going on in the world right now. Like, I don't know, that's sort of what comes to mind for me in this piece, is like, what would Frida think about the world today? Because she is a very pro like feminism and pro like challenging gender roles kind of person, so I feel like she would just be rolling her eyes at the state of the world right now and everything that's going on. So yeah, that was the part that I kind of struggled with most, whether I liked that and wanted to commit to that decision, or whether I, felt like it was too much and it looked out of place. So I'm kind of going on to her shawl now, and I decided to make the shawl purple so that the heart would still stand out and kind of contrast with it, but the overall color scheme would still kind of be in this like reddish purple pink palette. So I did this like really kind of pretty grape violet color, and I wanted the bottom of the scarf to sort of fade out into nothing. And this would also be a good time to mention that this image is available on my Redbubble shop. I don't always put my artwork available on my Redbubble shop just for copyright reasons. Like if I do fan art, I don't make that available on Redbubble because they're pretty strict over there. I do sell prints of my fan art on my Store Envy shop, which is always linked down below. But you guys know that. I feel like I've promoted my Store Envy shop time and time again, but I don't always talk about Redbubble, so I definitely wanted to talk about that. And I decided to put this design up there because I felt like it was original enough kind of concept that doesn't really count as fan art. I feel like Frida's image isn't quite fan art. I don't know. I guess you can tell me down below what you think. But I decided to make this available on Redbubble, and it looks so good on all of the items over there. I'll insert pictures of some of them because I made it available on lots of things. I made it available on t-shirts and mugs and pillows. It just looks really cool. So if you're interested in that, my Redbubble will be linked down below, and if I can, I'll link it at the end of this video. But it's just a good time for me to promo that because it's not very often that I make designs that look really good on merch. And this was one of those times, and I feel like this was a really big step up for me in my artwork. I feel like I loved the watercolor process in this piece, and that doesn't always happen. So when it does, I like to really just appreciate it. And I'm going to be doing watercolor more, I think, like I said in a recent vlog, or maybe that vlog won't be out yet, I'm not sure. But this reminded me of an idea I had a couple of months ago to do a series of works inspired by famous artists. And so I think after this illustration, I want to do a Van Gogh piece and probably a couple of other artists that I have in mind, like a Salvador Dali one, artists like that I love and admire, and kind of do a similar style to this portrait. So yeah, let me know if you're excited for that series. I feel like I'm pretty excited about it, and I am excited to do more watercolor work and improve my watercolor skills a little bit too. And coming up here, you're going to see me start the background of this piece, which includes a couple of different elements that I specifically want to talk about because I feel like they really took this piece to the next level. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating these soft rose-like shapes using just watercolor, and I'm using a light wash of like this light, you know, kind of pinky rose color, and I'm just using shapes, so no lines. This is completely freehand too, which was a bit nerve-wracking at first, but once I got the first couple roses down, I really started to just get into it. And I feel like this kind of frames the piece perfectly. And it just gives it this really cool look. I don't know. And it carries out that element of the flowers, which you see in a lot of Frida Kahlo's work, that, you know, it's just, she obviously loved flowers, and so I wanted to include that because I also love flowers and I love the way that they look. So I feel like the roses added a really cool element, and I didn't quite take them all the way around, but I took them about halfway up and around the halo shape that I had left around her head, and I'm going to be filling that in with some metallic watercolors. And I also, for the roses, I also go in with just a little bit of green to add like tiny, tiny leaves around the end. And I just felt like it needed a little bit of green. Frida does use a lot of green in her work as well. So I feel like just that hint of green ties it all together and breaks up that pink nicely. But overall, I really like the way that the roses came out in the background. I think they look really cool. I don't know, I'm proud of myself for that. And it was a good design decision because it was not something that I had originally planned on doing. And after I do the background, I do kind of go over all of my lines again to darken them. And this time I went in with my acrylic ink in sepia and a little bit of black India ink, just kind of mixed. So you'll kind of see that at the very end too, that the lines just look a little bit darker and a little bit bolder. But I'm using the Kuretake watercolor, metallic watercolor palette. I did a review on this. I love this palette. It's so good. And I'm using the champagne shade to do the halo just because I feel like it's a nice neutral shade. It's not too warm or too bronzy, which I did not want. I wanted a very, you know, kind of light metallic color for the halo because I didn't want it to be too distracting. But yeah, I decided to add this as well. This is kind of another ode to like a lot of Hispanic Catholic artwork and like the depiction of saints and stuff, which I grew up with. I can do a video talking more about that if you guys are interested, but yeah, as a child I would do a lot of this kind of artwork, so I can talk more about it if you're interested. But yeah, anyway, check out the artwork on Redbubble. I will have that as the first link down below, and I will have a look at the finished artwork at the end of the video. And lastly, if you want to download this line art and color it for yourself, you can go to my Patreon where you can download it for free. The only thing that I ask is that you credit me and tag me wherever you decide to post it, and obviously don't be a jerk and claim it as your own, and that's it. They're really easy rules to follow, and I would love if any of you colored this for yourselves. So that is it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I deeply appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time. Have a great weekend. Bye.